You think death is a tragedy, a cosmic error, a flaw in the architecture of existence, something that's slipped through the cracks of an otherwise brilliant design. We build hospitals, invent medicines, pour trillions into research, all in quiet rebellion against it. Every civilization dreams of escaping it. Fountains of youth, elixirs, digital immortality, gods who never decay. We treat death like the villain of the story. But what if it isn't? What if death is not the failure of life, but its engine? Look carefully at what life actually is. Not the poetry, not the romance, the mechanics. Life is chemistry that learned how to copy itself. It is matter temporarily arranged in a pattern that resists equilibrium. You are not a thing. You are a process, a self-maintaining storm of molecules burning energy to hold back entropy for a little while. And that little while is the key. Life was never trying to last forever. It was trying to last long enough to replicate, long enough to pass information forward, long enough to support the next iteration. That's the entire strategy. If organisms never died, evolution would freeze. The first successful replicator would still dominate the planet, unchanged, unimproved. No complexity, no nervous systems, no eyes, no thought, no music, no love, just endless copies of the same primitive chemistry. Death creates space. Death clears the field. Death allows variation to matter. Every generation that ends makes room for one that might be slightly better adapted to a changing world. Without turnover, there is no selection. Without selection, there is no refinement. Without refinement, there is no intelligence capable of questioning its own mortality. You exist because billions of organisms didn't. Every ancestor survived just long enough to pass the torch, then stepped aside. If even one link in that chain had been immortal, evolution might have stalled and you would never have emerged. Your genome is a fossil record of successful mortality. Even inside your body, death is essential. Cells are programmed to divide only a limited number of times. Telomeres shorten. Senescence sets in. This isn't accidental. Unlimited division would mean cancer. Immortality at the cellular level is precisely what kills the organism. Aging is not simply a breakdown. It is a trade-off. Genes that make you strong and fertile in youth may weaken you later. Evolution selects for early success, not eternal comfort. Once reproduction is complete and offspring are independent, natural selection's pressure fades. It sounds harsh, but it's efficient. Now imagine biological immortality. No aging, no natural death. At first it sounds glorious. Eternal youth, endless time, but remove death and watch what happens. Population explodes unless reproduction stops. If reproduction stops, evolution halts. If evolution halts, adaptation ceases. If adaptation ceases, extinction eventually follows. Even culturally, stagnation creeps in. The old never leave. Paradigms never fully shift. Power never transfers. Innovation suffocates under permanence. Progress depends on generational turnover. Science itself advances partly because old frameworks die with their defenders. On a deeper level, meaning itself depends on finitude. If you had infinite time, every choice becomes reversible. Every path eventually walkable. Every experience repeatable. Urgency evaporates. Why act today when eternity stretches ahead? Why cherish this moment if infinite replacements await? Scarcity creates value. Time is the ultimate scarcity. Your life has shape because it has edges. A beginning, a middle, an end. Without an ending, there is no story. Just an endless sequence without structure. Mortality gives your narrative tension. It makes commitment meaningful. It makes love intense. It makes courage necessary. Now step even further back. Physics tells the same story. The second law of thermodynamics guarantees increasing entropy. Order dissolves. Energy gradients flatten. Stars burn out. Galaxies disperse. Even black holes evaporate over unimaginable timescales. You are a temporary pocket of organization in a universe drifting toward equilibrium. To live is to temporarily push against entropy by consuming energy and exporting disorder. To die is to release that organized pattern back into the broader flow. You are not defying the universe. You are participating in its most intricate process. Some physicists suggest that life itself may be nature's way of dissipating energy more efficiently. Complex systems accelerate entropy production by capturing and dispersing gradients. In that sense, life and death are not opposites. They are phases of the same thermodynamic dance. Life concentrates structure. Death redistributes it. Both move the universe forward. And here is the strange comfort in that. Your existence is not a mistake in an indifferent cosmos. It is one of the ways the cosmos explores itself. Does your temporary nature make you insignificant? A diamond may last millions of years, but it does not experience those years. It does not feel wonder. It does not question its own existence. You do. For a brief interval, the universe becomes aware through you. For billions of years, it was silent matter. For trillions more, it may return to silence. But right now, in you, it is conscious. Duration does not equal value. Intensity does. A mayfly that lives for a day experiences a complete life cycle. A human who lives for decades can experience art, mathematics, heartbreak, transcendence. Value is not measured in years, but in depth. Imagine true immortality of mind. After centuries, memory erodes. Identity fragments. Motivation fades. Urgency disappears. Attachments become unbearable when you outlive everyone repeatedly. Novelty dissolves after you have seen everything 1,000 times. Human consciousness evolved for finitude. It burns bright because it burns briefly. Your mortality sharpens you. It forces you to choose. It forces you to care. It forces you to act. You love fiercely because time is limited. You create because you will not always be here. You forgive because holding grudges wastes precious days. You dream because the clock is ticking. Mortality is not an insult. It is calibration. 4 billion years of evolution shaped a lifespan long enough to learn, love, contribute, and reproduce, but short enough to allow renewal. Not too long, not too short. Precisely tuned for turnover and transformation. When you die, your atoms do not vanish. They disperse. They reassemble. They participate in future organisms, future consciousness, future experiments in being. Your ending becomes someone else's beginning. You are not meant to persist unchanged forever. You are meant to matter now. To experience fully, to choose deliberately, to love without postponement, to contribute before stepping aside. Death is not life's tragedy. It is life's strategy. You are finite. You are temporary. You are brief, and that is not a flaw. It is the reason anything beautiful can exist at all. And yet, even after understanding all of this, something inside you resists. Because logic does not silence instinct. You can understand evolution. You can grasp entropy. You can even admire the elegance of mortality as a system-level necessity. But when death becomes personal, when it has a face, a name, a voice you recognize, philosophy trembles. That trembling is not weakness. It is biology doing its job. Every cell in your body is built to survive. Every reflex, every hormone, every surge of adrenaline exists to keep the pattern intact just a little longer. The fear of death is not ignorance. It is adaptive programming. Organisms that did not fear death did not survive long enough to reproduce. So your fear is ancient. It is older than language, older than mammals, older than bones. But here is the subtle shift. Understanding does not remove fear. It transforms its meaning. Instead of seeing death as an enemy invading from outside, you begin to see it as the completion of a cycle already underway from the moment you were born. Birth and death are not opposites. They are bookends. The real opposite of death is not life. It is never having existed at all. Before you were born, the universe spun for billions of years without you. You did not suffer that absence. You did not mourn the centuries you missed. Non-existence was not painful. It was simply neutral. After you die, the state will be the same. The difference is this. Between those two infinities of silence, there is a window. A brief opening, a flare of awareness. You are that flare. Imagine a wave rising on the surface of the ocean. For a moment, it has shape, height, identity. It moves across the surface and can say, I am this wave. But the wave was never separate from the ocean. It was the ocean in motion. When the wave collapses, nothing is lost. The water remains. You are the universe in motion. Your body is borrowed atoms arranged into temporary coherence. Carbon from ancient stars, oxygen forged in stellar cores, iron born in supernova explosions. The calcium in your bones was once drifting through interstellar space. You are literally stardust organized into consciousness. And stardust does not disappear. It rearranges. This is not poetic metaphor. It is astrophysics. The heavier elements necessary for life are created in massive stars and dispersed through violent explosions. Those elements formed planets. On one of those planets, chemistry became self-replicating. After billions of years of refinement, that chemistry became aware. You are a late-stage consequence of thermonuclear reactions that occurred before Earth even existed. Think about the improbability of that chain. From hydrogen to helium, from helium to carbon, from carbon to amino acids, from amino acids to cells, from cells to nervous systems, from nervous systems to self-reflection. And now here you are contemplating your own mortality. This is not small. This is not trivial. This is cosmic. Mortality does not erase that grandeur. It completes it. Because without death, complexity would accumulate without reset. Systems require cycles. Forests burn so new growth can occur. Stars explode so heavier elements can form. Cells undergo apoptosis so organisms remain healthy. Programmed cell death, apoptosis, is essential for development. When you were an embryo, your hands began as paddle-like structures. Cells between the forming fingers deliberately died, sculpting separation. Without that cellular suicide, you would have fused digits. Destruction created form. Loss created precision. At every scale, death is not an interruption of order. It is a sculptor of order. Zoom out further. The arrow of time itself depends on irreversibility. If processes were perfectly reversible, if nothing ever degraded or dispersed, time would lose direction. You could not distinguish past from future. Memory depends on entropy increase. Recording information requires energy dispersal. To remember requires disorder somewhere else. So even your ability to recall yesterday is tied to thermodynamic asymmetry. And death is the ultimate expression of that asymmetry. You begin in low entropy organization and move toward higher entropy distribution. But here's the paradox. While the universe trends toward disorder overall, pockets of order emerge temporarily. Galaxies form, planets condense. Life evolves. Intelligence appears. Local order increases at the expense of global disorder. Life is not defying entropy. It is riding its gradients. You are a gradient surfer. You feed on energy differentials. Sunlight to plant, plant to animal, glucose to ATP, ATP to neural firing to thought, thought to meaning, and meaning might be the strangest emergent property of all. Meaning does not exist in physics equations. It arises in minds, in beings capable of evaluating experiences. Meaning is not imposed from outside the universe. It is generated internally by conscious patterns. So when you ask whether mortality makes life meaningless, you are assuming meaning must be permanent to count. But consider music. A symphony lasts an hour. When it ends, the sound waves dissipate. Does that make it meaningless? Or is its transience precisely what makes it beautiful? A note sustained forever becomes noise. A note that fades creates tension and release. Your life is a composition. Its value lies in its structure, not its duration. If it lasted forever, it would lose rhythm. There is another layer. Identity itself depends on change. If you were frozen permanently at one state, physically and psychologically, you would stagnate. Growth requires turnover at the cellular and cognitive levels. Proteins degrade and are replaced. Synapses strengthen and weaken. Memories reconsolidate. You are not the same person you were 10 years ago. Not metaphorically, literally. Most of the atoms in your body have been replaced. Neural pathways have rewired. Beliefs have shifted. Continuity of self is an emergent illusion built from overlapping patterns. Death is simply the final transformation of that pattern. Not a glitch, a transition. Now consider the evolutionary trade-offs more deeply. A species that lives too long accumulates mutational load. DNA replication is imperfect. Errors occur. Natural selection prunes harmful mutations primarily when they affect reproductive success. If organisms lived indefinitely, deleterious mutations that manifest late would accumulate unchecked. Mortality acts as a genetic filter. It clears the slate. It maintains genomic integrity across generations. On ecological scales, death stabilizes populations. Predator-prey dynamics depend on turnover. Nutrient cycles depend on decomposition. Carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus circulate through life and death. Without death, ecosystems would collapse into imbalance. And psychologically, mortality shapes culture. Art exists because time is limited. Legacy matters because memory fades. Generations teach because they will not always be here. Civilization itself is intergenerational collaboration across mortality boundaries. You inherit knowledge from the dead. You pass it to the unborn. You are a bridge, not a monument. Immortality would sever that bridge. It would trap knowledge within individuals instead of distributing it across time. The humility of knowing you will be replaced fosters teaching. Replacement encourages mentorship. Mortality creates succession. Succession creates continuity. There is something else we rarely confront. If death were optional, would life retain courage? Risk would become trivial if infinite retrees were available. Sacrifice would lose meaning. Heroism depends on stakes. The knowledge that something can be lost gives weight to action. Imagine loving someone knowing you could lose them tomorrow. That vulnerability deepens connection. If you both knew you had infinite centuries together, would the urgency feel the same? Finitude intensifies affection. Scarcity sharpens appreciation. This does not mean grief is illusion. Grief is real. It is the cost of attachment in a finite system. But even grief testifies to the depth of connection that mortality allows. Without death, there would be no mourning. Without mourning, there would be no evidence that something mattered. You might still ask, if everything ends, why strive? Because endings do not erase experiences. They delimit them. When a candle burns out, the light it emitted was not retroactively canceled. The warmth it gave was real. The illumination existed. Your experiences do not need to persist eternally to have been genuine. They were real when they occurred, and they ripple outward through influence, through changed minds, through altered trajectories. A conversation shifts a perspective. A kindness alters a decision. A discovery reshapes understanding. Even small acts propagate. You are not required to be eternal to be consequential. Now let's confront the deepest discomfort, the loss of subjective continuity. You fear not just death as a process, but non-existence as a state. The idea of nothing, But consider, you have already experienced nothing before birth. It was not suffering. It was absence of suffering. The terror arises because you imagine observing your own absence. But observation requires existence. You cannot experience non-existence. The fear is anticipation, not the state itself. This does not trivialize it. It contextualizes it. Mortality reframes existence from entitlement to privilege. You were never guaranteed consciousness. The probability of your specific genetic combination arising was astronomically small. And yet it happened. Against immense odds, matter configured into you. And for a short span, you get to see, to hear, to feel, to question, to create, to love. Not forever, but enough to participate, enough to contribute, enough to experience the astonishing improbability of being at all. The universe does not owe permanence. It offers participation. And participation, though brief, is extraordinary. Perhaps the deepest shift is this. Stop asking how long you get. Start asking how vividly you use what you have. Mortality is not an error to be corrected. It is the constraint that makes creativity possible. Every art form relies on constraint. A sonnet has 14 lines. A haiku has 17 syllables. The structure enables beauty. Your lifespan is a structural constraint. Within it, infinite variation is possible. You are finite, yes, but within your finitude exists vast internal infinity. Ideas, emotions, relationships, creations. A short novel can change a life. A brief encounter can redirect destiny. A few decades can contain more meaning than millennia of inertia. Death is not the opposite of life. It is the boundary that defines it. Without boundaries, there is no shape. Without shape, there is no identity. Without identity, there is no experience. So perhaps the real tragedy would not be dying. It would be refusing to live because you fear dying. The clock is not your enemy. It is your collaborator. It gives rhythm to your days, urgency to your dreams, weight to your choices. You are not meant to last forever. You are meant to burn, brightly, briefly, intentionally. And when the pattern dissolves, when the atoms scatter back into wider circulation, nothing has been wasted. The universe explored one more configuration, one more perspective, one more story, through you. And that is enough.